Well, good evening, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin, and this is my channel, McDuff Lives. McDuff Lives 1, McDuff Lives 3, and McDuff on Facebook. We're broadcasting on Facebook now, and welcome everybody from there and to my two YouTube channels. And tonight, I'm so happy. This is the third time I've been able to get these two guys together at the same time, and it coincides with a lot of awesome research that's going on. So, what is this the second time?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was the third time. Well, I must have dreamed the other one. Anyway, it's my dream team, so I can have my dreams. Well, anyway, it's the second time we got together as a trio, and but let's get right on into the content tonight. I'll just say hello to the chat room. Norman is here, and being here is here. Kate, Leslie, Corky, and Kevin Timmer. Good to see you. Leslie's here. Dave Fitz and Chris Lucas. Who else is here? Zaga Nostra is here. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to have you. Renner is here, and ECAT, and a bunch of other people that haven't quite joined the chat yet and don't have to, because you don't have to do that. It's good to have you anyway. All right. So Mark, David, and I chatted a moment before the show, and we decided to give David the first nibs tonight, or dibs, or whatever you want to call it, to start off. And I know what he's going to talk about, which is it relates right to what Mark has been publishing on Twitter, because it's everything seems to. I'm feeling the same way. I mean, this is not anything that I've discovered, but I'm feeling that things are coming together. My own research feels like it's starting to get some real solid legs underneath it, and starting to feel like I have a sense of answers to questions that I've been searching for 4 or 5 years now, or 10 years, more like it. Well, with that, I would like very much to just give it over to David Cranmer, Underdown, and introduce our first topic for tonight.
Well, just following that up, I wanted to talk about Marcus. He did a video, 2 videos, talking about really the characters involved with Roe versus Wade, as opposed to talking about obviously its impact on our society right now with all the other pressures that we're dealing with, but really diving into who the characters were, who were the lawyers, who were the judges, who were the politicians behind this. And it's there were characters completely unfamiliar with, that I was unfamiliar with, but as you said, we've been doing a lot of studying on the JFK assassination, and with the Cold War, and with the creation of the intelligence agencies, and it seems that everybody just sort of meshes in with everything that we've been learning about. So the big revelation that Mark shared was that Linda Coffey, who was one of the very young attorneys, she had a clerkship with one of the 3 judges that decided the Roe versus Wade case in Texas, and she was a clerk for her. She also applied for a job at the DA under Wade. Her law partner that she grew up with and went to high school with, his family had a personal connection with Wade as well, and he was an FBI agent that was in Ecuador in the 40s. So he has a J. Edgar Hoover connection as well, and that's on top of course, famously being the attorney and sort of the PR man for Jack Ruby after Kennedy was assassinated. Even Ruby, in fact, was posed as a newspaper man at the announcement of JFK's assassination, which Wade was the speaking, and corrected him, saying that that Oswald was with the Free Cuba movement, and not a different Cuban movement. One was pro-Castro, one was anti-Castro. So there's a lot of very intriguing elements to this, because the woman that was the judge, Sarah Hughes, she had a very close family relationship with both Connolly and Lyndon Johnson, and also Sam Rayburn, who was somebody I didn't know much about. I knew there was the Rayburn office building, but I did not know Rayburn's history. And of course, Rayburn ties right into the Manhattan Project, Lend-Lease. He was in a trio with Eisenhower during his presidency, with Lyndon Johnson when he was Senate Majority Leader, and Rayburn. They passed a lot of really important legislation. So that's just how I wanted to start, with saying that these are the characters we're talking about. It's, the top leaders of our government and our judicial system.
Well, let me just jump in and just catch up with the names, because I got lost early on when you said Wade. Now, let's start with Wade. Who is Wade?
Let's see here. First of all, thanks for having me on tonight. I want to make sure I get his name right here. Henry Manasco Wade. Henry Manasco Wade. The easiest way to remember the name Wade in this case, and hopefully the audience, if the audience is having audio problems on my end, let me know and I'll use my iPad instead of my microphone. The easiest thing to remember with respect to Henry Wade is that it is the Wade of Roe v. Wade. He was effectively the district attorney representing the state when two relatively young and junior attorneys were used to bring forward the case of the woman who took the name of Jane Roe, excuse me.
What was Jane Roe seeking?
She had two children already. I believe she was in her 20s at that time, and she was pregnant for a third time as of September 1969, and she was seeking the ability to have an abortion, which was illegal in the state of Texas at that time. Was
it completely illegal, or was it just like, you had so many weeks?
I think it was.
I think it was completely illegal.
What women would do was they'd either go to Mexico, and they said they had a flight on Friday nights where women would fly from Dallas to Los Angeles, and they would have the abortion in California and then fly back Sunday. And that was the system that people were using at that point. And of course, that's cost prohibitive to a lot of people to be flying or to be traveling.
So the narrative is that she approached an attorney, and this attorney, through a friend of a friend, knew somebody at a church that referred the name to a couple of young attorneys who didn't even really have established careers or full-time jobs yet. One of them was Linda Coffey, who I think was 26 or 27 at the time, and the other one was Sarah Weddington, last name Weddington, unusual name. And neither one, I believe, has ever really even owned a case before. So Sarah Weddington was, I think, 1 year younger. She might have been 25 or 26. And if you look at some of the older testimony, Linda Coffey said she was the tall blonde, and Linda Coffey felt a little bit less secure about herself. But they were both interested in pursuing the legalization of abortion and women's rights issues overall. Now, so Henry Wade was the person district attorney representing the state of Texas against the accusations that the Texas abortion law were implemented in a strict way, but they were at the same time also written not specifically, or I should say, too broadly to be able to enforce. I think that was as long as there were some other constitutional amendment challenges which were brought forward at that time. Okay, so that's pretty simple, right? Now, the bigger story about Wade, Henry Wade, as Dave just mentioned, is that he was also the district attorney who was called 3 times on the night that JFK was shot by an assistant for LBJ. LBJ was trying to get him because LBJ was really concerned that there was going to be the perception of a conspiracy. And Henry Wade was assigned the role of, I think, initially prosecuting Oswald. Oswald was shot, and then he took on this defense and PR role. In fact, you can see a lot of the press meetings days after the JFK assassination. It was actually Wade up there representing what the state of Texas was doing. Now, the intrigue of Wade doesn't end there, though. Wade was involved he was born around 1914. So in his mid-20s in World War II, he was working in both New York City for the FBI under Hoover to help find Nazis, which were infiltrating the U.S. military, helping with like the Norden bomb sight technologies. And he was also doing some work down in Central America. So a rather storied career and, interesting times that he just seems to be involved with very big things. His name, most people don't even know who the Wade is, and that's the Wade. Now, the other name which is really important here, now that we have Henry Wade of Roe v. Wade established, okay, is a judge, and the judge her name is Judge Sarah Hughes. Now, Hughes was born in the late 1800s, and she worked to a very late age in her career. She was one of the first female judges appointed in the state of Texas, and she had been a friend of the LBJ and his wife, Lady Bird Johnson's family, since the 1930s. Now, after JFK won the presidency, 1961, is it? There was one judge specifically across the whole nation that LBJ pushed hardest to get nominated to a local position, and that judge was Sarah Hughes. And there was even a new redistricting, if you will, for some new judges to be allowed. There was actually some House amendment, and Sarah Hughes came in as part of that. Now, the word from the newspapers that initially JFK wasn't, or at least the JFK administration wasn't sold on her. But there was a lot of manipulation, and David Cranmer, Underdown, sorry, saw the middle name, captured this pretty well on his Twitter about how there was a lot of jockeying going on in Congress to get this Sarah Hughes to be a judge in that area of Dallas, the same area where the district attorney happened to be Wade. Now, the legendary part about Sarah Hughes is that she was the judge who swore in Johnson as president on Air Force One on the night of the JFK assassination. They waited for her and her specifically to show up. And she is actually the judge. She was a woman of short stature, holding the book or whatever the heck it was, doing the swearing in ceremony. Now, if that doesn't intrigue you enough, Sarah Hughes was also, she maintained that role of being a judge until her death in the 1980s. But she was also a judge who had as a clerk one of those two young lawyers that argued the case of Roe v. Wade. And one of those clerks was Linda Coffey. Not only that, Sarah Hughes was also one of the three judges who heard the case and said, "Oh, we need to change the law." In addition to that, she was a women's rights activist. So conflict of interests galore. The part that everyone should, and the main reason why I started looking at this is I just found it odd that I didn't have any of this knowledge at the time. I just found it odd that abortion rights became such a big issue and were protected across the whole country around the same time that the virus cancer program was really picking up steam within the United States, that had an enormous demand for fetal cells to test various cancers, viruses, vaccines, etc. And the day after the CDC said you can do gene therapy on babies, they rolled it back. It was just, now again, correlation, not causation, but I found that to be odd enough to make me go, I have to look at this. This is something weird about this. And then you start going through these cases, I can't see anything here to suggest that there was a real, genuine, well-organized, organic effort to bring in, abortion protections across the United States of America in 1969, 1970, 1971. It feels as though They were too young. Perhaps they were extremely capable. Young doesn't mean incapable, but it does mean, how would you say, inexperienced at the very least. And then that case from that local three-judge hearing in Dallas, went straight to the Supreme Court, where they won. I mean, it's a jackpot move. It could happen, but it's a little bit like a legal equivalent of a Mark Zuckerberg story. You never wrote a program in your life, and then over the weekend, while you're drinking beer, you come up with Facebook, which is the equivalent of 20 years of Pentagon work, which takes off, and he never really writes a program again. It's like, and neither one of those attorneys really had, serious careers after that. They had some good positions that they were offered. Linda Coffey, I think, had more legal credentials, more successes, but really not much. She couldn't even keep her own practice open for the next 40 years. She struggled, which, again, of all the lawyers who probably have tried to get abortion rights, however you feel about it, I'm not stating my position on this. I'm just stating there must have been some real legal eagles, highly paid, experienced people, which must have worked for years on that case, and probably had, because of their capabilities, had extensive careers otherwise. And it's just odd that this case came to be, and it lends forth credibility to the hypothesis, okay, that it was not really driven by women's rights. It was tied into, somehow or another, changes in the U.S. approaches to biological warfare, changes to the continuous investment into viruses and cancers. National Cancers Act was actually passed during the time of Roe v. Wade. I mean, the connections between these things are obscene. But that's just to get things started. So again, Judge Sarah Hughes, and then the Henry Wade, the DA of Roe v. Wade. And again, both of them being so well connected, of course, to the JFK assassination as well.
That's awesome. That's some of the most amazing reporting I've ever heard. I congratulate you, Mark.
Well, we're working together. It shouldn't be me. The stuff is out there. I'm just surprised it hasn't been looked at this angle before. We're
talking about over 50 years of people not looking at that. I for my own self, I've looked into the JFK thing, and I have very strong opinions about it. And that photograph on the plane where the guy in the back is winking at LBJ, and somebody caught it and said, I see what's going on here. It's the nod and the wink. And that is consistent with what I think happened. Maybe I'll just share this quickly.
Please.
They had if upon the death of the president, okay, the vice president becomes the president, okay, you don't need a judge to swear you in, okay? But look at what the optics of it. He's there. The picture, Jackie is next to him. Jackie Onassis, Jackie Kennedy is right next to him. The other, important people are standing around there, and he's just as solemn as can be with his right hand raised, and that creates the illusion that it was some kind of a legitimate transfer of power. And it was not. It was a coup. And that has been what I've been trying to say for a long time. Now, think about the idea that who is he going to get to be the judge on the plane? He's got to have somebody that he trusts that's going to do what he needs. You can't just call up and say, hey, Chief Judge, can you send somebody over to my plane? I need to swear an oath. You got to pick the judge. So this, once again, it just looks so conspiratorial in hindsight. It's all part of some big horse trading quid pro quo that Rayburn and Johnson and the Texas guys, they got something for this, and then in exchange for that, they're given, I imagine it's the Eastern establishment Stanford crowd, the authority to go ahead and do their stem cell research or whatever they need all of that placenta for.
David?
Yeah, I just wanted to add the guy winking in the background is really important too, because that's Jack Valenti, and he was a assistant to Johnson, and he was in charge of the public relations after the assassination. So he probably would have been the one that installed Wade as sort of the point man to handle the press. Jack Valenti also he stayed on. They said he lived in the White House for the first 2 months after the assassination, and then he is recruited by Lou Wasserman, who, again, I don't know the history of Hollywood, so I was just studying up on him. But they said Wasserman basically controlled the, Valenti put in the motion picture act, or not the motion picture act, but he was in charge of the rating systems on the movies, which gave them great leverage over the content control. And they said Wasserman really had a strong grip on guiding what kind of media was coming out, which ties right into the public relations, propaganda, and PR angle. Which, of course, with doing a cover up, you need to have a full spectrum dominance of the media, but also the content coming out of Hollywood as well.
Absolutely, and that's the MPAA seal, the motion picture,
Yeah.
seal of approval, and who was that? That was Jack Valenti, the guy winking on the plane. Awesome.
Now, you can learn a little bit more about this when you start going through the different presidential elections during the 1960s and early 1970s. There was clearly the victory of Nixon in the 1968 election was an enormous upset by everything I've been digging into. It just felt as though everything had been done to try to find a way to have Nixon not win the 68 election. Initially, what they were trying to do, I should say, what the Lyndon Johnson said was that he didn't want to run, and he said he actually would have. He was actually hoping for Nelson Rockefeller, who was a governor or senator from the state of New York, to get the Republican nomination in 1968. Well, he didn't. It went to Richard Nixon, who ultimately won the election. Now, Nelson Rockefeller, one of his biggest campaign things which he was talking about with the most fever was abortion rights. And Nixon, he actually didn't put it front and center as a platform. I think that he, again, I don't know. I can't do a deep dive on Nixon, but it seems as though he didn't really see it as the end all be all issue to decide an election. He actually, in some cases, had some very off color and racist remarks about when to abort and when not to. But he did not really see it as the key to winning an election. So Rockefeller did not get the nomination, and then, sure enough, the person on the Democratic side who was leading at that time was RFK, Robert F. Kennedy. Well, he was assassinated on June 6th, and he was actually pro-life for the most part. So you start looking at these things like who gets shot and who doesn't get shot. It's like, wow, this is really curious. Now, I'll throw a few more crazy bones while we're on this particular topic here. Someone who actually worked as an assistant in the Nelson Rockefeller campaign in 1968 in the state of Washington was serial killer Ted Bundy, who actually then returned in the 1972 election. I still can't figure out what that was. But another key point in the 1968 election here is that Rockefeller, Nelson Rockefeller, was very good friends with Daniel Evans, governor of the state of Washington, who was probably best friends with Bill Gates Sr.
Mm.
This is really the Bill Gates story. It comes into play in 1968, and the relations with Daniel Evans, and who did become a U.S. senator in the 1980s after Scoop Jackson was probably killed. But it stated that he just had a, unknown immediate cause of death, heart issue. Right after the Korean airplane was shot down. But also the relationship he had with Nelson Rockefeller. Also, when Nelson Rockefeller did ultimately become the vice president of the United States under President Ford. And that was after the Watergate issue and Nixon stepping down out of embarrassment in 1974, I think that was. And there were several people that was considered. Nelson Rockefeller won out. But I think number 3 on the list again was Daniel Evans, who was the Bill Gates Sr. Very good friend.
He's a Republican or a Democrat?
Yeah, a neoconservative. So Washington State is like the home of neoconservatism. Somewhat fiscally conservative, socially very progressive, and many of the neoconservatives that we know of came out of the state of Washington or were mentored by key people out of the state of Washington. But some say Scoop Jackson was kind of like the pioneer of that movement, although I actually think he was probably one of the most personable ones as well. It seemed to take a little bit of a darker turn after Scoop was knocked out.
Well, let me. I didn't know you were.
No, but there's one more key thing here again to anchor, because we're still just doing a lot of incredible correlation. Okay. And I still don't think, even after this, we're not going to get to 100% causation. But this is one of those correlations that so many books have missed. And because they missed this name, I call into question a lot of other people's research on this. Not everyone, though. Some people have caught on to this. Is that in 1969, a high-ranking person in the United States Department of Defense was Dr. Donald Malcolm MacArthur. Mm-hmm. And on January 9th, he asked for $10 million for the Department of Defense to start studying cancer-causing viruses. Okay. He was married to the niece of Lyndon Johnson. Okay. Now that money was ultimately approved. Then later on in that year, the Nixon issued a statement on chemical and biological defense policies and programs, and effectively, at least tried to officially say U.S. is not doing biowarfare programs anymore. Of course, we know that didn't really happen because not too long after that, I think it was in the year 1971, December 23rd, 2 years later, it's the National Cancers Act, which basically turned the spigot on, and the money started gushing towards virus and cancer research at that time, which picked up some of the money which was allocated for the Department of Defense, etc. But you can see how the events of how the Roe decision in Texas, which started out in 1970, slowly progressed all the way up to the Supreme Court and was made the law of the land in a ruling in January 22nd, 1973, 2 days after Richard Nixon's second term started, and on the same day that Lyndon Johnson died of a heart attack in his house. So there just seems to be a lot of very, very strong correlations between this. And I didn't even tell you, and again, this doesn't really stick to the causation stuff, but yeah, I have to keep mentioning why people need to stop thinking about Bill Gates and think about Bill Gates Sr. Because on almost the same week that Donald MacArthur was asking for the money for cancer-causing viruses, the what they call the Computer Center Corporation opened up in the city of Seattle, started by a woman named Monique Rona, who introduced introduced at the University of Washington, Gary Kildall, who was really the inventor of what became Microsoft, and Bill Gates. There's a lot of signs to suggest that the whole creation of Microsoft has very little to do with Bill Gates, and it's mostly deals which are being offered to Bill Gates Sr. And there was a lot of technology, a lot of computer technology going back to Boeing Corporation, so on in Seattle, because they knew there was going to be a need. One of the biggest drivers of computing in the 70s and early 80s was genetic research and cancer research. And of course, the University of Washington, since the 1940s and 1950s, had the largest fetal cell tissue bank on the planet. It was at the University of Washington where regents were Bill Gates' father and Bill Gates' mom. And of course, and even today, Fauci is running all of the trials for SARS-CoV-2. Gene therapy programs are basically being run out of the University of Washington right now, and the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Institute. So it just lends a lot of weight to this possibility that, as opposed to a squarely focusing on CIA and drugs, that possibly one of the biggest movers is computing, genetics, cancers, viruses, cell tissues, access to all of those biological weapons. It's not apparent at first, but when you look at who gets signed, in this battle, of course, the only judge who even ruled against in the Supreme Court against Roe, the Roe v. Wade decision, the only person who wrote the dissenting position was assigned by JFK. All the other ones went along with it. So how much of knocking JFK out?
Who was JFK's judge? Was it Stevens?
It wasn't Stevens. It was. I'll have to look it up. I did write it down in my notes somewhere here. I just found that to be just lending more and more weight to, there was really something going on here. Now, whether or not the drive was abortion starting in 1962, 63 with JFK, or if it continued to escalate, it's not clear. But man, I mean, there you have it. And then with that timeline, and I sent you a link to a page I'm working on. It's just kind of off to the races, and you just start pulling in things, and it's a completely different way of looking at things. And what it was is when they rescinded Roe v. Wade, and everyone is arguing right now, John, about it being a left versus right, a religious freedom, or religion, or the far right Christians taking over, and there's many different spins on it. And I'm not stating my personal views on it. Okay, I'm just seeing that as decisions being made without really any of that in mind at all. That there's a much bigger agenda behind this, with effectively unlimited money because it comes from the World Bank. And people can protest and hit each other in the head with signs all day long, but they're just going to injure themselves and not understand really what's going on. There's no fruitful conversation of understanding what I suspect is the bigger agenda here.
Tell me what you think, that how is that agenda advanced by striking Roe versus Wade?
The only thing better than taking fetal cell tissues and injecting them into animals to humanize the animals to test cancers is to do gene therapy on babies. That's it.
Wait a minute.
They want more babies, and they want gene therapy on babies, and gene therapy on babies is starting now with mRNA injections into babies for SARS-CoV-2. And the combo ones are coming out. SARS-CoV-2 and pneumonia and RSV are on the way. Gene therapy for babies. And pregnant women is next. It will probably be coming within the next few months.
I'm speechless. David,
Well,
say something.
well, to defend the people that study the overthrows and the drugs and all that, I did want to add that with Richard Nixon, I feel like it's often forgotten that he was Eisenhower's vice president for 8 years. so that's, and his daughter married Eisenhower's granddaughter. As long as we're talking about
I didn't
family.
know that. Wow. I
Yeah.
did not know that.
So Camp David is named after David Eisenhower, who married Nixon's daughter.
Wow.
And so you had, so I said before, you have Rayburn and Johnson and Eisenhower working on a lot of these Cold War military projects, like, Marshall Plan, national roads, things like that, which the so there is a lot more ties there. The other thing I wanted to drop in there that I think is important to think about was Sarah Hughes, the judge. She was got her law degree from George Washington University in DC, which I'm sure John knows a lot of George Washington alumni. But just to keep in mind, that's where J. Edgar Hoover's an alumni. Both the Dulles brothers are alumni. Bill Barr went to George Washington. There's a lot of history within that law school. I've also read Nixon was in charge of the Operation 40 team, which developed into the Jam Waves group that we always think about with Ted Shackley and with Shackley and I'm blanking on another name. I'll think of it in a second, but Ed Lansdale, as being sort of the leaders of these, kind of CIA overthrow squads that are going around. We mentioned Wade being part of the FBI in the 40s and a sort of a generation before, but there's a lot more, linkage there. I mean, I'm always, I feel like you always love to try to say, the long shot one, and it shocked the world when Nixon, got the presidency. But I really find that these groups are very tightly organized. I've read multiple places that Nixon was somebody that was deeply tied to Prescott Bush, that he was actually a mentee of Prescott. So George H.W. was CIA director in this whole era. 76, he was the CIA director. So there are all these characters are linked. Lou Wasserman was best friends with Ronald Reagan and also with Jack Valenti. So that now you're getting into the old California politics as well. So that, these characters are linked. I'm just not a believer in the red team versus the blue team. I think they just use that as a way to get people to fight, as you're saying. And I do think Roe versus Wade is about a hot button of issue, as they can, pile on with all the people, worn out from the, lockdowns and pandemics and the fear of what'll happen to their family and communities and everything. So I think that there's definitely merit. I mean, as I've told Mark, I mean, I feel like Steve Ballmer always gets overlooked in his Microsoft role, and he's, he studied in Belgium. He went to school in Belgium in high school, and he also went to my high school as well in Birmingham, Michigan. And he's from, Farmington, Michigan, which is right next to where Nathan Wolfe is from, who's somebody that's metabiota. He's EcoHealth. He's dealing with the Munich Re insurance company. You talked about World Bank and these issues. These characters are all tight, and so when you bring forward something like the judge swearing in Johnson, being a lifelong friend of Johnson, basically. The other judges that were involved in the Texas three judge tribunal, one of course was named William Taylor, like Bill Taylor, like our friend that George Webb has done a lot of work on, who's currently involved with Ukraine. His father was, the small package nuclear reactors for the Navy. It's a different Bill Taylor, but again, the other judge's name was Irv Goldman, and Irv Goldman was the founder of what's now the largest, lobbying firm in the country. I think it's called, oh my gosh, it's I should have written it down before. I can't think of it. I'll think of it in a second. But he so he had a really big legal career also, not just just hanging out in Texas doing Texas state issues. He was an international lawyer, and he was with a Strauss. I forget the first name of the Strauss, but he was somebody that became the person that was involved in the collapse of the Soviet Union negotiations. That was one of the other founders of this law firm. So there are a lot of really interesting players all around with this Roe versus Wade decision.
Yeah, and if I may, earlier the other two people that was considered to be the vice president when Ford became president, it was Rumsfeld and Bush, and Evans was third, I think, in line, but it was Rumsfeld and Bush.
Let me jump in with a comment on Nixon.
Tricky dicky.
I think it's fair. I think it's fairly clear that he did not know the reason behind this Roe versus Wade and this trial and this manipulation that went on to get it to the Supreme Court. I don't think Nixon was in the loop on that. But beyond that, when you realize that you made a very good point that he took Nelson Rockefeller out of the running for the presidency.
Yeah.
And Nelson Rockefeller is not somebody you want to mess around with. Not at all. So what power did he have? Why did he think he could do that? How, you're talking about them all being tied together, but hey, this is a terrific stand up. I'm not going to play ball with the Rockefellers move. And so that tells me there's power with Nixon. And then the other thing is that there are people on the internet that say, and I haven't checked it out, but I think it's worth looking into, that Nixon was blackmailing Allen Dulles. Nixon, because he had been in the ONI, the Office of Naval Investigation, during the war, had been privy to information that Dulles was doing business with the Nazis. And so he had that leverage. Not only if he had it over Dulles, then he also had it over Prescott Bush. So there's the question: is who's wagging the dog? Is Prescott Bush really, or are we just being told that? We see this picture where Prescott is kind of pushing down on Nixon's hat, and like he's bullying him.
Yeah.
But perhaps that was just for the optics, and we have the opportunity now to try to sort out the players again. That fits with a lot of this, when you divide the Catholics from the Protestants in what you just said, that makes sense. George Washington University. Why is there a George Washington University? Because Georgetown is a Catholic university. Georgetown is the Jesuits. If you are a WASP and you want to have your kid grow up in higher education in the best school in Washington, D.C., but you don't want to use the Catholic school, for God's sake, what do? You create a world-class university of your own, and you call it after the president, George Washington University. So that lines up some differences there. And it's not surprising to find a Richard Nixon and a Bobby Kennedy agreeing on the or at least not being advocates for women's rights to choose their own abortion policy. That's not something that was on their radar screen, not something they were worried about, because most of the states had laws against it entirely. It was a crime. So that, to me, reminds me of the division between the Hanoverians, the George I, George II, George III, those guys that represent the oligarchy, versus the Jacobites, which was the Catholics and the dissenting Protestants working together. And so it's like both ends against the middle is the point. And you can see that this techno-fascism that is coming out of the WASP tradition is not really innate to the Catholic tradition. It's this, the technical aspect of it is more akin to like Freemasonry and the Scottish Enlightenment. All of these historical ties to me tell me that there are still these two different traditions. One of them with the European Rothschild-based financial system that is now represented by the City of London and Wall Street. But also, we still have a lot of people that are just against that, and they're the inheritors of the Jacobite tradition. David posted something that just was really fascinating on Twitter today or yesterday. A monument to the Jacobites in the Vatican. The Vatican was, of course, devastated when the revolution came in 1688 that took the Catholics out of the line of succession for the throne of England. But they kept believing in the next heirs to the throne, right up to the third one. There was Bonnie Prince Charlie, and there was another one, the Pretender it was called. And that tradition follows the Catholic belief that, that James was by the right of God, the rightful king of England. And James II was, and James III was, and Charlie was, and the next one was. So then that line dies out, and we still have, like all over the South, we have people that are here because their great-great-grandparents fought in the Battle of Culloden, or in the 1715, or it's the old Celtic-based British Isles versus the Anglo-Saxon-based and German-based Hanoverian that come in, and those are the ones that are tied to Allen Dulles, and the rest of them from going back into Office of Naval Investigation and that period of time would be tied to military intelligence as opposed to CIA. And so what you've said has helped me to put that together, so I didn't want to let it fly out the other ear before I recorded it. So anyway, that's just a broad view that you've been opening up for me, and thank you for letting me do that.
And I mean, I feel like we didn't study that. I mean, I had such a multicultural high school, and people, we really didn't get into the politics and religion. I mean, it was very much a we learned, I don't know. I mean, I think back to the history, but we certainly never talked about Jacobites and Hanoverians, and I feel like I'm as I'm discovering this, I'm seeing that my family, I think, is a mix of both sides. On my mom's side, very much the Jacobite side, and on my dad's side, very much Hanoverian. And it's just like, I mean, it's sad when I think about what happened to all of them, but it's also helpful because I can put together the networks. And the other angle that I feel like is the as you said, is the Rothschild and sort of the JP Morgan model being sort of the way they set up the banking system with the Federal Reserve. That is, I think, in America in the last 130 years or whatever, that is the model where they use the Christians versus sort of the Jewish bankers, and also with the Catholics in there. I know I'm grateful I went to Boston College because I, got to be at a Jesuit school and be in Boston and sort of see that perspective of people that grew up with, Catholic faith and how important that is to their families. Because in my family, we didn't really have a strong, church going or anything. So it's very interesting. I mean, I'm very, encouraged to hear you say that, because I feel like you've studied it a lot, and I really am grateful that you feel like it's helpful.
It's really helpful. It's absolutely exciting right now, and with things like Mark has put together, and we just keep on going. It's as long as we keep, doing what we're doing, I inevitably we're going to win this. People are just too smart to completely ignore all of this evidence, all these coincidences, uh, and frankly, people have gotten so disgusted with it that they've given up on trying to understand it. And that's the other thing that's really needed is somebody that's done the homework and then can say, with confidence, here's the way I see it. Here's what I think is in play. Here's what's in play today, and here's the moving parts, and here's what I think we can do to get back on track. And I do think one of the most important things to do is to reform the banks. And the LaRouche and Schiller people are right on the money when they say they've got to go through a bankruptcy procedure. We've got to take these big banks and push them through a bankruptcy procedure and get rid of all of that worthless paper that's on the books that is weighing down every single person in this country and in this world. So that's what I hope we can inspire people to take up the cause again and not just sit back and watch it like it's a disaster unfolding before their eyes. We were talking with Carol and Tara and Amber last night on the subject of our what's an assault on our children and our traditional system of morality, which is another assault on us that's being waged against us. And so many people are it's like seeing these families at a parade, and then this extraordinary guy comes prancing through without any clothes on, with a cute little bear mask on. And I mean, it's just a picture that no father and no mother ever wanted to see. And yet there they are, standing there on the side of the thing with their little kids next to them watching it. And I think, this is not right. This is taunting us. This is trying to push us into getting angry enough to pull the trigger. And I think it's we've got to find a way to communicate to these folks that you don't have to stand on the sidelines. There are facts involved here. There are people who have done these things. You can look at the arc of history and you can sort it out. And if you don't do that, then the future is probably going to be very, very bad for your kids and their kids. It's right now. It's now or never.
You worded that well. It's people are being pushed where they're going crazy on both sides, in particular now of the political aisle with this issue. People are boiling, and I don't like where this is going. I believe most people could actually be very rational about this, and just over lunch could really see eye to eye on this. They just sat down and talked. But I suspect what's driving a lot of these decisions really is not the political debate that we thought it was. But before we move on, you did mention also something about the techno-fascism, and that is, I wanted to just touch on that. I had not been following. I don't follow Supreme Court decisions that much. I dig into things as research leads me to it. I don't really read anything aside from my Bible daily right now, religiously. Okay, but it's been brought to my attention that there have been, for the last several years, a long list of rulings related to decisions related to procreation, related to birth, which I didn't even know had happened. Rulings regarding the use of new technology for artificial wombs, things called biobags, and all these different rights and scenarios about using materials and different donors and the role of technology. I mean, just volumes and volumes of this stuff has been written, and all of these things were referred to in the role in the Roe v. Wade reversal. It wasn't just, you know what, states should be more powerful.
Mm.
That was almost not, that was very, this much of it. There was all of these other technical things, which maybe people like Kavanaugh wrote himself, but he's probably has a staff of people that represent his work, I assuming anyways, not to slander him. But there was a lot more behind it. It wasn't a very simple, you know what, let's not do this anymore. This was a bad idea. There is volumes and many cases over the last several years. I had no idea these things happened while everyone else is arguing about other issues, and I got sucked into it too, and both you guys as well. Other things had been happening which had led to the basis or a foundation for this reversal, which again suggests it's not being driven. These changes are not being driven by, Christianity or far right or far left, whatever the case is that you'll read on the news.
Or politics at all. It's
Yeah.
it's the agenda behind the scenes that we're not allowed to know about.
Exactly. I'd like to comment those on more detail, but I just became aware of them. Just going through the list, I'm like, oh my goodness, it would take me weeks to read all of these things. This is nuts. It's nuts, but it's there. So I just encourage people to, at your leisure, if you're interested, dig in and just become aware of how many rulings, how much was referred to in this reversal. It's not a real simple. I think everyone is being mocked right now with the way that they are being encouraged to approach and argue this completely unproductively. Again, I'm really trying to refrain from my beliefs on this because there's the religious part and then there's the legal part. It's just, let's just understand what's actually driving this as opposed to having arguments over what's not actually driving it at that level. Well, and how it might have tied into history. I mean, there could be major historical events that, never really made sense. But when you look at it through a different lens, you're like, yeah, I can see how those things tie together right now.
And look at, this incredible precipice that our economy is on. And what's the biggest thing in play is pharmaceuticals. And the continued research budget, which keeps going up and up. But now, of course, we've got also a huge military giveaway that we're giving away to Ukraine. But the real, a trillion here, a trillion there. Sooner or later, you're talking about real money.
Real money.
and it's real money, and we know that it's sucking the value out of our currency as everybody goes to the gas pump and you see it, hey, this dollar is not worth what it was worth last month, and all of that is going on because they've all placed their bets on the technological future that you've described so well, Mark, with this transhumanism as their real goal. And doggone it, if we don't let them go there, then they will crash the economy. I think they do have us kind of in a box there because we're so extended that if they wanted to, they could pull the plug. I have no doubt. There's enough collusion among the big banks that hold the loans and the paper that if they decided to, they could just pull the plug on our economy. So how do we stop it in those circumstances? Once again, I think we have to look at the economic factors behind it and the history of how we got in this mess, and then start digging our way out through a honest bankruptcy procedure. That's my hope.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I mean, I feel like it is demoralization is the program right now, and it's Phoenix program. It's the guerrilla tactics of just getting everybody destabilized and just creating destabilization campaigns. I've said before, I'm somebody that is, was really disappointed when I studied finance and felt like what you explained could happen at any time, that if they, just push a button, that the economy could be in a depression. And The debts have always been unpayable during at least my adult lifetime, as far as, paying it back or whatever. So the money is, it's just gotten to the point where it's, as we're going back and studying these deals, I mean, some of the biggest governmental programs were, hundreds of millions of dollars. And that was like the biggest thing that ever happened. Now that's like, they just cut that like nothing now. I mean, so yes, the inflation is, it's here, and it's, I don't know how to prepare or, have a solution for it, but I do think that, it's something that trying to explain that this isn't the first time that this has happened, that the use of banking panics to destabilize societies is an old trick. I think John said on his show last night with the girls that the Fabians are a very big area to look into, and the roundtable movement and the whole groups that created the Federal Reserve systems. It's the same roundtable cartel. So learning about that, and trying to look, because again, there's so much distraction, and talking about kind of, I don't know, things that I feel like there isn't a lot of backing to really dig into, that they try to, again, just there's a million ways to scare people. And I just feel like that's what we're in the middle of right now. And I am hopeful that we can, come up with a solution to, call it out. I mean, it's extremely frustrating to me personally that I feel like we've done a really good job of identifying some key characters that should be grilled, and nobody's been grilled.
That's the whole problem. They've got sleeper agents, they've had sleeper agents here for so long that they've got the grandparents. I mean, the grandchildren of the original sleeper agents now are inhabiting our federal judiciary, our executive departments, and Congress. And that's, I mean, Bill Taylor has talked very, very extensively about the Kaiser Wilhelm family, and how, that's, and then the Mueller family, and all of these, which very, whether they came over here or not as knowing sleeper agents, that's the effect has been that their families have continued a loyalty to something or somebody other than this country, and they tend to stay loyal to those old European ties. It's another aspect of it, but just like they are pushing on so many different fronts, and that's how that's the Fabian tactic, is to hit you there and then hit you over there and hit you over there and then hit you over there, but never engage in the big debate. So you can't get somebody to sit down and debate this with you. You can't. There is not a Christopher Hitchens that's going to stand up and fight this. There's not there. Those people have been taken off the playing board, and they don't allow the kind of conversation we've had tonight to reach the ears of the public. But that's got to change.
Yes, it does.
I hope so.
I believe it is. A lot of censorship right now, but I believe we're getting the message out there. If I may, as we're wrapping up, if I may put in one plug for people who watch your program. I usually don't promote my own stuff. I just like it to let it, be seen or found organically. But I did an interview with a family who lost their only daughter. Her daughter's name was Danielle. Last year from, let's just say, medical mistreatment during the COVID era. She was 27 or 28. She had cerebral palsy, and it was just it's a heartbreaking story. As you think it, by the end, you're going to be mad, but at the same time, as heartbroken as you'll also be filled with hope of a really beautiful person that was lost. I really encourage people to watch that video. It's on my Live 2 channel. I have a copy of it on Odyssey and BitChute. I am working with a startup group of people who are finding individuals who have had challenges or loss related to the current FDA protocols. They've been doing a lot of interviews. I've only done a couple myself, but I'll be doing more and posting them more. But please check out that story. And it's not a plea for support or anything, or it's just to know that it's a horrible, sad story. It's also will fill you with hope of just what a beautiful person can be, and there's something about that mother's plead for help. It just really warmed me up inside. So, anyways, if you can, if you haven't seen it already, please check it out and please share it. Please get the word out on that video, because of censorship. It won't be seen. It should be seen by 1 million people easily. No excuse. But it probably won't be. It certainly won't be if people can't do everything they can to share it in their groups. So, thank you for allowing me to promote that, John.
The lady's name again was
Danielle.
Danielle. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's just called Danielle's story.
Mm-hmm. And David, I know we're always seeing you on Twitter. I look forward to everything that you write on Twitter, and folks, you can gain a lot of knowledge by following David Cranmer Underdown over on Twitter. What else are you working on right now, David?
Well, just kind of what Mark said before. I just sort of follow where the information takes me. I don't really have a set, I'm not trying to prove a thesis. I mean, I'm not using the scientific method right now where I, have this is the hero and this is the villain, and I'm going to try to fill in the blanks to make it so. I just, I try to go along and just be fair with everybody and identify them and just give factual information. When I take shots at people, I think it's deserved.
All right. Well, it's been said many times recently that we have to keep the joy in our lives, and we have to recognize, the humanity of all of us, and to mourn our losses, but to cherish the human side of our loved ones and the people we meet in this journey of life. So, it's so important that we remember to try to do something that makes us happy, that makes, what makes you happy? Is it walking the dog or whatever it is, make sure and do it. Don't just get bogged down in this stuff. And, then we come back refreshed to the task, and we get new, amazing insights every day. So, that's enough for tonight. Thank you so much for being with us, Mark and David. It's been a real pleasure. And thanks everyone in the chat room. Good night.